What's up, everybody? My name is Jacob Seyer, and I'm here today to answer your questions about fingerstyle guitar technique. Let's jump in. Meghan has our first question today, and she says, I'm having trouble with bar chords, so does that mean that I can't play songs that have bar chords in them? And the answer is no. Of course you can play these songs. So here are a few tips for your bar chord. The first thing I usually try to do with a bar chord is to eliminate the bar completely and only play with the fingers that don't require the bar. So let's take G minor, for example, where we're going to take our third finger and our fourth finger, place them on the 5th fret of the 5th and the 4th strings, and clean those up, making sure we're on our fingertips nice and close to the fret. Pretty easy so far. Once those fingers are set up, let's take our index finger, flatten it out as much as we can, almost like we're treating it like a capo. Kind of looks like one. We're going to have a super flat top and a bit of a curved underside to our finger. This is going to ensure that there's an even amount of pressure across all 6 strings. Once that bar and once our fingers are placed, give that chord a strum. You might notice that you got some buzz notes or some dead notes in it. All you got to do is go through each string individually and try to pinpoint any problem spots. You might notice that your 4th finger is touching the 3rd string. So curl that 4th finger, almost like you're doing a chin-up on a chin-up bar, and let that string pass underneath. Could also be that our bar isn't quite flat enough. So really work on extending out, almost like you're stretching your arms out as far as you can. Extending that finger to make sure that our finger is curved and evenly applied pressure across the entire fretboard. Meghan also has a second part to this question. She asks, are there alternate fingerings for bar chords? And the answer is yes, there are so many alternate fingerings for bar chords. So let's just take one, for example, and see what we can do to simplify it. Let's start with the B minor chord. What we can do is remove the bar from the B minor, just like we were talking about removing the bar from our first G minor chord, and only play the fingers that are required without the bar. And you'll find that you can actually get a really clean, nice sounding B minor chord with only 3 fingers. If we use our first finger on the 2nd fret of the 1st string on an F sharp, our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string on a D, and our 3rd finger on a B, which is the 4th fret of our 3rd string, those 3 notes alone are enough to give us a clean, beautiful sounding B minor chord. As you start getting more comfortable with this, you can add in other fingers and fill out your bar chord little by little. There are other cases where we can remove the bar and use some open strings to our advantage. This adds a little bit more color to some of our chords. A very common one in this case is F major. So if we're playing the F major with a half bar, which is the 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, we can remove that bar and leave our E open. Now, the only problem with this is that this creates a different quality of chord. Now instead of playing an F major, we're playing an F major 7. And this can be a really common tactic to just instantly replace an F chord in all songs. And it just doesn't always work that way because the E won't always fit within the harmonic structure or the harmonic context of our song. So be careful when you're taking out bars in order to leave open strings. This can really change the quality of your chord. Refingering and revoicing bar chords is a really fun way to discover new colors on your guitar. If you're comfortable with how chords are built, and you have a guitar diagram in front of you, or you understand your fretboard really well, do some exploring. You might find some really unique sounds. Thanks so much for your questions, Meghan. Magnus has our second question and asks, how should I approach practicing? We gain the most improvement in our practice when we're staying aware of our intentions. So here are 3 ways to make sure that we're aware of what we're doing in the practice room.
Woo!
Number 1, pay attention to the balance of work and play in your music. One thing musicians of all levels struggle with is falling into a creative rut. When we fail to balance working on technique with playing what's natural, music becomes pretty boring because we're no longer active participants in what we're playing. Imagine practicing scales, nothing but scales, for 6 hours, all day. Or on the other end, playing the same riff that was really, really fun at first, but that's all you got to know, over and over and over again. At that point, we're so good at what we're doing that there's no risk or reward in playing. Our muscle memory is kicking in, or our mental memory. Is mental memory a thing? Mental memory isn't a term, but it's a thing. It kicks in and we become complacent. But creative ruts are nothing to worry about. They're just a sign that we've let one side of our practice take too much precedence over the other. We want our music to sound better than it did yesterday, not the same as it did yesterday. And it can be really easy to fall into that rut of sameness if we're not paying attention to technique versus improvisation, or work versus play. For example, technical drills, sight reading, and theory study are all totally essential to keeping your hands strong and your mind sharp. The feeling of concrete and noticeable fitness in your playing is really addicting, so why not focus all your time on becoming the best, fastest, most technical player in the world? No. Technique itself isn't an end goal. It's designed to complement our musicality. And if we aren't applying our practice skills with new songs, challenging repertoire, and improvising, our music begins sounding very dry and uninteresting. That said, playing familiar tunes with great mileage, noodling, improvising, and composing are all totally fundamental to our expressing ourselves musically. So why not play what feels good all the time? This is the other side of feeling trapped in a box of sameness. Without a steady flow of challenging new technique work, theory study, or aural skills, our music begins sounding a little bit floaty. We need something to ground us, right? We need something to keep our chops moving. Both working and playing are integral to enjoying an awesome trajectory of improvement in our music. And
all work and no play makes Michael a dull boy.
The second tip to keeping your practice routine fresh is to keep your schedule both regular and adaptable. A lot of us are full-time working adults. I'm lucky to be a full-time musician, and even then, I find myself working on admin, teaching schedules, transcription, a lot of stuff that doesn't actually include me being physical on my instrument. So, what do I need to do? I need to schedule time out, whether it's 30-minute increments, 2-hour-long increments, whatever it is that you need. Make sure that you give yourself a set amount of time a day to have your guitar in your hands. A lot of times when teachers tell you, yeah, you need to be practicing 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, depending on what your level is, even if it's 10 minutes a day, people get very overwhelmed because we're all very busy. But if you can break up that time and play throughout the day, your routine will get a lot healthier and your playing will improve no matter what. There are a couple of ways that you can think about this. Say you want to commit to having 1 hour of practice a day for 5 days a week, which is pretty reasonable for most of us. You wake up in the morning, you give yourself a little bit of improvisational time or practice time while you're having your coffee before work. You go to work, you have your work day, you come home, you decompress, you have some dinner, you watch some TV, you go on a run, whatever you want to do. When you come back, you have another 30 minutes to do whatever you want. You can improvise, you can practice your scales, your arpeggios, your theory, you can listen to music. Don't forget that listening to music is an important part of practicing as well. There you have it. You have your hour, 30 minutes in the beginning of the day, 30 minutes at the end of the day. The idea is you want to make sure that you're playing when it feels right, but also giving yourself enough discipline to meet a standard quota. The third and final tip to keeping your practice routine fresh and alive is to keep an ongoing list of both dream songs and attainable goals. When we first start playing the guitar, even when we're in the moderate to advanced stages of playing the guitar, our taste always outweighs our ability because we hear something, we're like, oh, that'd be so much fun to play. But we're not there yet, technically. Write that down though. Write down what song is inspiring you because your inspiration is what you'll always come back to bring that fire back into your playing. In the meantime, start writing out some attainable goals. What kind of scales can I learn today? Can I learn a major arpeggio? Can I learn how to construct a chord? Can I learn a new right-hand pattern today? Can I break down that dream song in a way that allows me to play a simpler version of it? There are all of these different musical things that we can do to build towards those dream songs that are short-term goals and are easily attainable. To wrap it up, practice can be work, but practice can also be a lot of fun. We got to make sure that we're paying attention to what we love doing in our practice and what we don't really enjoy doing, but what might be healthy for us. So, if you're a full-time working person or if you're a long-term musician playing music every day, you still have to pay attention to what is helping you grow, what is difficult, and what is just kind of fun and relaxing to play, like what is easy. If you can find a balance between both of those things, I think your practice routine is going to get a lot healthier and stronger. Thanks for your question, Magnus. Taya asks, tips for memorizing pieces? I have 6 things for you to think about when you're sitting down to practice with the intention of memorizing a piece. The first thing that you want to do is to start from the end of your piece and work towards the front. A huge habit that a lot of us musicians have is to just start from the beginning of a piece when we sit down to play. So the thing is the first chunk of your piece will be super duper strong and then kind of deteriorate in skill along the way. And that's just because we're not used to starting in the middle or starting at the end. The next time you sit down to practice, try to invert that habit and start from the middle, start from the end, and work towards the front. The second thing we can do is in a similar vein. I want you to look at your music, pick a random measure or a random lyric, and see if you can play it from that point. Pretty tricky, yeah? Can you begin playing your piece from any point in the music without hesitating? If not, get to work. This is a surefire reading and memory exercise that will just strengthen your understanding of the music as a whole. The third thing I think is a relatively easy technique to help you both with your technical handling of the piece and your memory of the piece, and that is to just practice smaller sections. Another habit that a lot of musicians I see get into is to just play huge sections, whether it's a whole page or 2 or 3 pages at a time. So start with 4-bar chunks. Don't try to overwhelm yourself with too much music. Looping small sections can be a really fun way to try new things in parts of your music. Say you make a mistake, well, it's not a big deal. You can just go back at the end of your 4-bar section and fix it in the next round. It can also be an interesting time for you to try new improvisation techniques or to try new dynamic techniques. Experiment with your musicality a little bit more. P.S. Always finish a small section by landing on the first note of the next bar. If you're looping a section, that's fine, but once you decide that you're done looping that section, land on the first note of the next bar. This will train you to connect your phrases more naturally and will give you the technique required to land from one bar to the next. The fourth thing is to practice without your guitar. Sing the melodies, tap out the rhythms, and just get your music stuck in your head. Do these things while you're cooking or you're walking, and especially before you go to bed. Pre-sleep activity is more likely to get logged in our long-term memory. The fifth thing to do is to analyze your piece. This doesn't have to mean harmonically, although it can. When some musicians hear the term analyze, we panic a little bit. We don't have to do this in a theoretical way. All we really want to do is to understand the framework of our piece. So see if you can identify the verses, or the chorus, or the bridge, or if you can identify an A-B-A song format. All we're really trying to do is break down our music into its barest framework. Once that framework is set, then we can start filling in the details. Building a house is a common way to visualize this. You build up your frame first, you put on the walls, you hang up the decorations, you fill in the rest of your home with furniture and, I don't know, more decorations. I don't know. I've never built a house before, so I'm not totally sure if that's how it works. The sixth and final thing that I have for you to help you memorize your music is to contextualize it with a story. We can't forget that when we're learning all of these new technical things and these analytical things to help us memorize our music, that we're delivering a story to people. We're delivering an experience and a feeling. I've often found that learning and memorizing the music of others is much more challenging than memorizing my own music. That's because when I write music, I have an inherent story and an inherent feeling attached to what I'm writing. Read about the composer or the songwriter or the performer of this piece when it was composed. What context did they write this music in? Where were they when they wrote it? What do the lyrics say? These are all things that can enrich your musical experience and send you to the next level of delivery. The main thing to remember when you're learning and memorizing new music is that you're delivering a message. All of these 6 things that I just mentioned are behind that fact that music is a story, and we want to make sure that what we're playing is properly communicated to our listeners. Give some of these things a try and let me know how they work. Thanks for your question, Taya. Scottie says, I've noticed your hand movements are very gentle or delicate, very smooth and deliberate. When I try to work on moving smooth like that, both in my picking and my fretting hand, my accuracy declines. Is there any way to work on that other than just practicing in front of a mirror? Any exercises? This question can be answered as such. This is a really nice observation, man. When I see good players that are just flowing across their fretboard effortlessly and creating all of this beautiful sound, that tells me that they know their music inside and out. On a more concrete level, they also recognize the balance between tension in their music and release. When should they push and when should they relax? There are 2 things that can help us recognize these balances, and one is mental and the other is physical. The first thing is mental, and it's about knowing your music inside and out, just like I said a second ago. The balance of tension and release is everywhere in all styles of music, whether it's metal, Balinese gamelan, country western music, Armenian, folk, prog, metal, jazz. Sometimes when we're listening to a song, it feels really big and really emotional or really packed with notes and really intense, but a good, well-written song always has a moment of release where the music slows down and there's more space. You can kind of think about this like jumping on a trampoline. It's a matter of careful timing and precise movements. When you're on the trampoline, you're not really thinking about all that, but you jump up in the air, you have this feeling of weightlessness, and then you're timing out your next jump to get another big jump of air. Careful timing and precise movements give us that weightlessness feeling. So just like planning our next jump on a trampoline, we want to learn to look ahead in our music and plan out how we're going to feel about this section. Start with exercising focus on small sections. Here are a few questions that you can ask yourself when you're practicing sections. How do you want this riff or this phrase to land with your listener. Is this section well memorized? Shoot for understanding the musical direction of this riff or phrase. Does this phrase move up or down? Is it mostly in the same place but very rhythmic? And finally, how do you want to phrase your music? Do you want the loud versus the soft, the push versus the pull, things like that? The second, more physical approach to having that more flowing, relaxed looking posture in our music is to practice right and left hand synchronization. What I mean by that is we need to learn to pluck and fret at exactly the same time. The metronome feels like everybody's worst enemy. That incessant clicking in our head is something that even I avoid, but it is in fact our friend. Metronome practice always seems to start with tension, but if we can learn to master the use of a metronome within our piece, we can manipulate that tension and relaxation in our music. Also, by ensuring that our fingers are landing on the string at the exact same time, it connects our notes more. Not one finger is muting the string at any given time. Then, you can hold tension or relax the tension at any given point in your music. And this is what makes music fun. So remember to learn as much about your music as you can, memorize the piece, put some mileage on it and play it for a while, and to pay attention while you're learning the music to whether or not both of your fingers are striking the string at exactly the same time with the use of a metronome. And this should help you with that flowing look. Thanks for your question, Scottie. It was a really nice observation. When was the last time I drank water? Ago. Megan's back with another question, and she asks, strumming patterns and new chords together can be too much for my brain when I approach a new song. Can you show me how to break it down and make it easier to approach? The first thing to do when you're approaching a new song is to identify whether the chords or the strumming pattern are more difficult for you, and to attack specific problem spots by simplifying your strengths. For example, if you're having trouble locking in the rhythms of a strumming pattern, but are comfortable with your chord changes, take your left hand away from the situation, no fretting, and just simplify your rhythm. Strip away all of the excess and only play on the most basic beat. Once you've found your pulse in the song, then you can begin adding in some of the extras. This way, you can get a feel for the groove of the tune and not be distracted by your left hand in the chord changes or the excess of some of the strumming pattern. On the other hand, if you aren't able to land every chord change within a crazy strumming pattern, that's totally okay. Use a simplified strumming pattern to allow yourself more space to land each and every chord. This will give your left hand plenty of time to move slowly, carefully, and accurately. Practice both giving yourself as much time as you need from going chord to chord and giving yourself a very particular amount of time. And if you're a singer, you can actually let the lyrics guide your chord changes. This isn't always the most rhythmically secure way to make sure that you're playing the song properly, but it's a nice way to enter into a new song. Once each element of our chord progression and our strumming pattern are complete, smash them together. And be sure to start slow and give yourself plenty of patience, and don't be afraid to kind of break away from the regular strumming pattern and do your own thing. As long as we have that pulse, and as long as our chords are landing on the right beat, it'll all be okay. Thanks for your question, Megan. And now, it's time for Matt's super lighthearted, unrelated lightning round. SpongeBob, or Rick and Morty. SpongeBob. Seasons 1 through 5 were gold, and they will always appeal. They'll appeal to like my young, like 9 and 10-year-old self because it's like hilarious with good paintings and funny art and like crazy storylines. But the fact that I'm a 29-year-old man watching 29-year-old fish go through daily struggles, and it's still hilarious to me, that's why. I will say that Rick and Morty gets a highly honorable mention because it appeals to every single one of my adult sensibilities when it comes to cartoons, with its chaotic, kind of multiverse, nihilistic kind of humor. But, like I said, early SpongeBob hits me as a kid and as an adult, so that's my answer. That's all I got for you today on guitar technique. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure there will be another guitar technique video. My next Q&A will be covering songwriting, arrangement, and composition. So stay tuned for that. I also want to thank my patrons over at Patreon. There are 11 of you now, which is incredible. You guys are the reason this Q&A happened and the reason why more are coming, the reason why I'm able to produce music and content for a living, and I'm forever grateful to you for that, especially in times like these. So, until next time, wear your mask, wash your hands, be good to one another.